Happy Halloween. It's the Puckleheads Spooktacular Halloween special. I'm Marcus White, and I'm, as you can tell, if not, you can't tell, then, there's something wrong with you. I am dressed as the Flash, joined, as always, by Connell McNeilis, or should I say Burt Macklin, FBI.
FBI, that's right. Burt Macklin reporting for duty. I was framed for a crime I didn't commit, stealing the president's rubies. But now I'm back in action. They brought me back. I was just too important to the Pawnee Police Department, and I'm back on the force here, Marcus. Ready to talk some hockey.
Right. Always great to be joined by a member of the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Yep.
And one so as important as Burt Macklin. It's our first episode, I think, of the season, right? I think our last one we did were the previews.
Yes, it is. It is. And it's been a fun first month here. I mean, it's already, November 1st tomorrow here, Marcus. And I think as we were discussing before the show, folks, I mean, a lot of surprises. And honestly, I think some very entertaining hockey so far this year. I'm not sure. And I know the goals have been up to an extent. I'm not sure if there's a reason behind that. But you know what? There's been the youth movement in the NHL is taking over. I mean, we've seen these young players. And it seems that teams are finally starting to maybe listen to that model of the speed kills, four lines going like the Penguins did last year and the Blackhawks seemingly have been doing for a while now. And I think it makes for better hockey for the average fan to super fans like us.
I think it's been a very surprising how awesome the hockey's been. It seems to have kind of carried over from what we saw with Team North America. You're seeing a lot of young, really exciting teams, even if they're not very good. Toronto is must-watch hockey every night with Austin Matthews after he scored 4 goals in his first game. Mitch Marner. Is it William Nylander? Is that his name? William Nylander. They're loaded. Their goaltending hasn't been great, but it's led to some more entertaining hockey games. But like you said, a lot of surprises early on. A lot of teams starting off very slowly. Some teams starting off very hot, which we'll get to a little later on in the show. But before we get into our Halloween special segments, we're going to talk about some of the transactions we've seen across the league and some developments. Hampus Lindholm just signed with the Anaheim Ducks last week. Jacob Trouba remains unsigned. Seeing Lindholm sign, Connell, and eventually what he signed for just reiterated the fact to me. And Ryan Lambert wrote about this on Puck Daddy. It's a great article. I think you should check it out. These players in their RFA deals, the system's designed to screw them over. They're designed to not make as much money as they're worth. Hampus Lindholm is now making less money than Rasmus Ristolainen. Part of that is because, Anaheim is pretty much already capped out, and that's all they can afford to pay him. But, it's also because the system is designed to keep wages low for RFAs. And what you're seeing now is, and Lambert touches on this in the piece, but what you're seeing now is it's kind of freezing out the middle class of NHL players, guys who are, 29, 30 that might have gotten, a 3 or 4 year deal at, $3 or $4 million a year. Those guys are getting frozen out of the league as teams are starting to pay these young players a little more, but, the system still is not designed to allow them to have their max earning potential. I mean, if Lindholm's on the open market, you got to think he's making what Aaron Ekblad made after his RFA contract was up. And, Ekblad's really the only example of a player getting fair market value at such a young age. What do you make of these developments with that, Connell?
Well, I think I'll put a little positive spin for a second here. I think it is showing that teams realize they need to invest in their younger players if they're going to be successful in this league. Like you said, we're getting rid of those marginal players, and it's not that there haven't been good players throughout their NHL careers, but frankly, the NHL teams are rewarding their young players for hopefully what they're going to do. We've seen, I believe, who is Jurgen Klinsmann a few years back when he didn't put Landon Donovan on the World Cup roster, talked about how North American players get paid for what they've already done, not what they're going to do. And so in a comparison there, now we're not always the biggest Jurgen fan, but, for this example, I think it works in that they're paying for what he's going to be, Lindholm. He's 22 years old. He's our age. He's already a very capable top 4 defenseman in the NHL. Now, should he be getting more money? Compared to what his worth, when you look at his stats and where he's going to be, it looks like throughout his career, yes, you're absolutely right. He's got his cap friendly now, 5.2 cap hit for the next 6 years here. His NHL salary this year is actually only $3 million because they're trying to put some things around here. I think this really has the signs for the Ducks to eventually make another move, Marcus. I know the GM had said maybe not. But yeah, to me, I think it stinks that he might not get what he should be worth. But at the same time, you're seeing less and less teams do those bridge deals that we've seen for years and years. And so I think there is a bit of a positive spin to it here. That teams are like, you know what? Why not give 6 years to Lindholm right now instead of, down the line they would have had to pay him a lot more money. So are they restraining him? Yes, but at the same time, I think it's a smart business move. And, Lindholm still gets paid a good amount of money here. I think it's a win-win for both sides, actually.
I think the CBA, this could potentially be a point of contention in the next CBA arguments, but I think, ultimately player labor leadership is always going to be pretty filled with veterans and isn't going to be filled with young guys. And I think those guys aren't necessarily going to think, big picture and say, hey, we need to get, the NHL career, you peak at scoring at this age. We want to, kind of maximize that earning potential more. But I think the owners are so entrenched on the restricted free agent process. And I think it's clear that whether there's, vocal collusion, and I don't want to, put that accusation on the NHL general managers, there's a clear, you don't touch my RFAs, I don't touch your RFAs policy
in there for sure.
I think we haven't seen an offer sheet. I'm trying to remember the last offer sheet.
Jay Weber was the last big one I can remember.
Yeah, that's coming up on 4 years ago, right?
Yeah, that's summer 2012. So that's over 4 years ago now. And they did that, that's why he got that big money to begin with, because the parent and then the Predators were basically just scared and said they couldn't afford to do that, so they wanted Tony. That's the last one I could really remember.
Yeah, and I think too that he's I think too that the offer sheet, I don't know if it's going to go the way of the dodo, the next CBA, but it's supposed to be a tool for leverage for these young players, but these NHL GMs aren't willing to give up, the picks when they have to pay these guys. Although when you get a proven player at that age, you can make the argument they're worth a first, a second, and a third, especially if you're a team picking late in those rounds. The chances of a late first round pick turning into a special NHL player are usually pretty low. So, it's interesting to see. And I wonder what happens now with Jacob Trouba after seeing Lindholm sign. I think ultimately he's going to end up signing, and he'll probably end up signing for a lot less than he expected.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a tough draw for sure. To me, like you just said there with the NHL GMs, if there's a good RFA out there, if you're going to be, if you're a team that maybe was willing to give up those first and second round picks, if you're a rebuilding team, or even if you are a team that's contending, either way, if you're adding a strong piece to the mix, if you're a young team and you have a chance to get a Jacob Trouba, who is already an established NHL defenseman for going on 3, now 4 years, I mean, to me, I would give up a first, a second, and third, because that's already a top prospect. That's a guy who's going to play in your NHL right now, and he's going to be on your team for hopefully the next 10 years. For 1 year of a draft where you might not even get a player who's even, a seventh defenseman. You don't know. Drafts are a crapshoot. He's a sure thing. I'm taking the sure thing every time and not gambling on the draft, Marcus. We've talked about it before. We could go on forever. It just baffles me when you really think about it. I don't get it. But, Marcus, I think I'm going to bring it back to the summer with the college free agency thing here, too. You wonder if that's going to become more of a route for these young players to get more leverage. We've seen Jimmy Vesey and Kevin Hayes, two guys who eventually went to the Rangers. But there's been guys coming through that platform saying, you know what? And I hate the fact that people get ripped for them. And I don't want to seem biased because those two guys who happen to be first-round draft picks wound up with the Rangers. But I don't think it's fair. If it's part of the collective bargaining agreements, it's within the player's right to use that as leverage. And so to sit here and criticize them for, these old guys who want, go to the team you're drafted on. But listen, if you don't see an opportunity as a young player to play in a certain place, I can't blame you. They want to have a chance to. This is a business, and they need to make their money. And a business like this, and we've seen it. I mean, your career could be over with one false swoop, and an elbow comes across your head, and you're never the same. And so they have to make their money. I really think more guys are going to start doing that, Marcus. Is kind of wait it out and then have a little bit more leverage down the line.
Especially if they're college players, I think.
Especially if they're college
players. Guys that come out of junior might not be able to do the same thing, but I think you're going to see that more with college players. I mean, VC said, he was interviewed. I was listening to him. He was interviewed on a Sharks broadcast, on their radio broadcast when the Sharks played the Rangers a couple weeks ago. And he's like, I talked it over with my family, and I basically did, you never know when you're going to have an opportunity to have free agency like that again. So he wanted to have that and kind of strike while the iron was hot and have his choice of team when he could. Because, you look at these players, these teams have rights to them, I think, either until they're 25 or they've been with the team for 7 years, and that's whatever comes after. So VC is going to be close to 30 when he's a free agent next, most likely when he's an unrestricted free agent, barring some relinquishing of his rights by the New York Rangers and, how he started the season. I don't see that happening anytime soon. But I agree. I think, if you have the tools, you might as well use it. I can understand why the GMs aren't willing to do that, especially because they don't want to, mess up relationships with each other. But it's frustrating for me to see as a fan when, there's these methods to see your team improve and to not see your team try and take advantage of that. Now, Trouba, I think he will end up signing in Winnipeg. I think it's going to be interesting though, because his beef with them isn't financial. It's purely with playing time. He wants to go to a place where he can get more playing time. He's behind Tyler Myers and Dustin Byfuglien on the depth chart. One of those decisions makes sense statistically. I'll let you, the listener/viewer, determine which of those decisions makes more sense. And it's not the one about Tyler Myers, I can tell you that. But I do think he'll ultimately sign because, these guys just don't have a ton of leverage.
Yeah, it's a tough draw. I mean, and that goes back to the NHL talking about the righty-lefty stuff, which I still think is pretty ridiculous at the NHL level. I mean, if you want to focus on a learning curve when you're younger and just make it easier for your, peewee players or something like that, I can maybe understand it. But I have 3 righty defensemen on my team and 1 lefty, and I think they're able to figure it out pretty well. So I don't think NHLer can't do that for whatever reason. So
yeah,
a little bit ridiculous, but we'll see where it goes. And I am with you, Marcus. I think the next CBA agreement, this could definitely be. I think there's going to be a lot of talk about this. Could they find an agreement where the control goes from maybe 7 years to a 5 years maybe or something?
Right.
I think that's probably more realistic than them outright, getting rid of that or getting rid of entry level deals that our GMs will never agree to something like that. So we'll see how it goes. And it'll be interesting down the line here. And speaking of GMs and agents having issues here, it sounds like out of Brooklyn, which, they have issues with literally on the ice, literally with their ice surface.
Have you been to a game at the Barclays Center?
Not yet. I'm hoping to get to one this year at the Barclays Center. But I mean, I literally have not heard one good thing about it. I have people who've seen concerts there and haven't really liked the venue. I don't know.
It was a basketball-only venue.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, that's just so, from a business standpoint, it couldn't be a worse decision to what the owners of the Barclays Center decided to do, limit to basketball. And when the Islanders are hemorrhaging over there, you could have easily made a great deal and stolen some money from them. But yeah, not just the ice surface here. In the front office, Islanders holding on right now to 3 goaltenders, Yaroslav Halak being one of them, who had a great World Cup of hockey. And he is having an issue with that, and his agent apparently has pretty much called out the Islanders, said this is ridiculous. My client's too good to be having 3 goalies potentially for 2 spots. Demanding a trade, Marcus. It sounds like Halak is on the trade block early in the season, 10 games in. I mean, we talked about a ton of teams who are desperate for goaltending here, Marcus. Could this actually turn out to be a blessing in disguise for the Islanders if someone overpays for Yaro Halak?
It could, and I think he's good enough, and I think he's shown that he's good enough that he can help a team a lot. Unfortunately, some NHL scouts don't think too highly of him, and part of my language here, but some question his give a shit level. I think a team could, they could definitely get a nice haul here. I don't really understand why they don't just put JF Berube through waivers. I don't think he'd get claimed. I know they claimed him from the Kings, and there's some, hope. And, maybe a team might claim Berube because he's cheap, and, the LA Kings could use.
I was going to say the Kings might just take him right back. They're so desperate right now.
They're going through all kinds of goaltending injuries. Both Zatkoff and Jonathan Quick are out right now. They have the 6th worst save percentage in the league. a team that could use a lock, it's the usual suspects. It's the teams we talked about all off-season seemingly and in our preseason specials and previews. Carolina sits last in the league in save percentage. They're in the same division as the Islanders, so maybe that won't happen, but that screams of a team that could use him. Mike Smith's out and could be out long-term for the Coyotes. I think that's another fit. Dallas, of course. There's a lot of early statistical noise in some of these numbers I don't quite yet trust. I think Philly's goaltending is going to improve. I think Ottawa's will. Nashville, there were some questions about Pekka Rinne, so maybe he won't. And I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but he looked awful against San Jose on Saturday. And I know he had a good start to the year before that, but he looked awful. The first goal the Sharks scored, he comes charging out of his net like Dominik Hasek. The Sharks get around him. They don't score on the immediate shots after, but they maintain possession and score on that shift. The second goal, Joe Pavelski throws it at the net from behind the red line, the goal line, and Rinne can't cover the puck. And then the third one, he's scrambling out of position. Hasn't been a good start for him. Could Halak help the Predators? The way they're struggling, and we'll touch on that later, probably. But there's a lot of teams that could use some goaltending, and I think they, like Carolina, yes, it's in the division, but they have so many young, promising pieces. You can get somebody for Yaroslav Halak.
Listen, clearly the Islanders have an issue with Halak already because they're holding these three goalies, okay, first off. So clearly it's not like they're holding him as he's, Patrick Waugh or something like that, or Marty Brodeur. They're not holding him in that light. They clearly don't think as highly as they probably should of him. And so to me, you know what? If he now wants to leave, now he's pissed off. So I always feel, if he's pissed off and wants to leave, there's no reason to me the Islanders are going to keep him. And so, listen, get a bidding war. There are teams who are going to be desperate for goaltending. You don't have to do it right away. If he wants to sit out and be stubborn, that's fine. It's within his rights. It's in the NHLPA. He's allowed to do it. So you know what? Go for it and see what you can. I think there's teams that are going to be desperate. Like you said, Carolina is just loaded with young talent and prospects there, both at the NHL level and the juniors and AHL level, as well as draft picks. You can pick at them a little bit. You can kick the tires with pretty much everybody else. The Kings, I know their goalies are desperate right now. It doesn't make sense for me for the Kings, only from a cap standpoint. I don't know if they're going to want Halak for another this year and next year at 4.5 with Jonathan Quick still there, unless they, could guarantee basically they swing him again in the offseason or something like that. That's a high risk. Could Dallas somehow convince the Islanders to take one of their goalies and then sweeten it with a nice prospect or something too? That could be an interesting case there if the Islanders maybe want some security there in the back end, in the crease. It's going to be interesting that it unfolds here. It came out of the blue. It just happened on Sunday morning, actually, and Halak, who's for whatever reason gotten bad flack throughout his career at the NHL level, you hope this doesn't hurt his reputation even more. But listen, I think there's going to be a couple GMs who are going to be able to see, all right, we need a goalie. This guy is a capable, above average NHL goalie at the least. I think he's going to get moved, and I think the haul actually is going to be pretty nice for the Islanders.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, Alan Walsh is his agent. He's a very, very vocal agent. And I think, this has happened before. He's been very, he does his job as an agent. He pines for his clients. He helps them out, and he has their best interests at heart. But I think, Halak, he's had a slow start to the season, but, it's 5 games. Every goalie in the world has struggled over 5 games and judging that. But, his whole body of work, he's a very good goalie. I think Dallas, you raise an interesting point. If either of those goalies have no movements, I'm not sure they're going to waive it to a team that already has 2. And especially if one of those goalies is an Alan Walsh client, I'm not sure if either of them are. But I highly doubt that trade will happen. But it's strange. I think, it's going to be interesting to see because it could, like you said, if a good team gets Yaroslav Halak, that could pretty massively change their fortunes here.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting down the stretch. And we talked about the potential for a lot of goalie trades going into the season. Halak just now thrown into the mix could really liven things up as we get down the stretch here. And, it's only 10 games into the season. Do the Islanders just hold on and wait for the best, or do they move him quickly so he's not a distraction? This is now, for the record, this is the second season in a row now where the Islanders are having guys demanding trades. And, of course, with Travis Hamonic. That was for more personal reasons, and they seem to
Right.
have settled that a little bit. So I guess that's okay for now. But doesn't look good for the Islanders. They've had some issues with with their facility, with their playing the last couple of years, obviously with the Barclays Center, and a lot of mystery around that. And now issues with their management and the players. So it's not necessarily something you want to be seeing here down the stretch. So we'll see what happens. But as we get into the Halloween fever here a little bit, we're going to play a little game with our listeners. We're going to wonder some NHL teams, some surprising starts. We alluded to it earlier with a few teams. So, Marcus, I'm going to ask you a couple teams. I'm going to have you ask me a couple teams. The surprise starts of the season. And we're going to see if they are a trick. Are they tricking us? Are they going to falter out? Or are they treating us to a nice ride for the rest of the season here? Marcus, you ready to go here?
I am absolutely ready. Who starts? You or me?
I'll start here. We'll start with a team who we've talked a lot about going to this offseason, from the offseason into this season. Huge trade, trading one of our boys, PK Subban, the Montreal Canadiens, Marcus, for the second straight season, starting very hot. 8-0-1 here to start the season, a plus 17 goal differential. Marcus, winning 7 in a row. Is Montreal a trick or a treat for the rest of the season?
It pains me to say it. I think they're a treat. I think
really? Oh, okay. You're surprising me on that one.
I think they're going to sustain it, but I will say we need to slow our roll on noting that this is the epic turnaround of the Montreal Canadiens.
Oh, God, I hope for the sake, I hope they just never win a game again.
I hope so too.
I hope they lose every game the rest of the season.
The Shea Weber love, yes, he's played well. He's played very well in Montreal. He's surprised me, but some riders need to slow their roll. As you mentioned, Montreal started just as well last
They started
season.
better, actually. They had one more point in through 9 games last year, so
Yeah. And Nashville, who we'll touch on later, they've struggled too. Look, I think just because Carey Price is back, this is a treat. They've been a decent possession team. They're in the top. They're 12th in score adjusted Corsi, and they are 11th in score adjusted Fenwick. I think early on this is a team that's played well, puck possession wise, and has shown that okay, they could be a legitimate team, but we need to slow our roll. As big a reason why Shea Weber's starting so well is this writing of this article on a few days ago about Shea Weber and the Canadiens that Dave Lozo wrote on the comeback. Highly recommend you all read it. He's getting a .982 save percentage when he's on the ice, and that's because he has Carey Price. The Canadiens are in the top 2 in the league in save percentage. I'm sure I can check right now, actually, the PDO of the Montreal Canadiens. I'm going to guess they have the highest PDO in the league, if not one of the highest, simply because of that save percentage. And what do you know? They lead the league in PDO this season with a 1.069. I think it's going to regress, but we talked about this in our Atlantic Division preview. I do think this is a treat because the rest of that division is not very good.
Yeah,
and there's an opening right behind Montreal, or not Montreal, right behind Florida and Tampa Bay. I don't think Montreal gets out of the first round, even with Carey Price, especially if they play Florida or Tampa, which is most likely what's going to happen. So I'm gonna hesitate to say that they're a treat so far. I'm gonna limp in there with saying that they're a treat to start.
Yeah, I'm with you. I get that, and I think, Marcus, this is a team. It's one of those teams when you have Carey Price in net. Plain and simple, you don't have to be the number 1 possession team in the NHL. If you're in the top half and you got Carey Price in net, you're probably going to be successful. It's just the way it goes. You don't need to be an overly dominant possession team when you have a goalie that good. I think that was the case for the Rangers for years with Lundqvist there too. And you look back to all the great goalies, I think it's a similar concept. I'm a little bit more hesitant to call them a treat, but they have been good. And frankly, as long as they can play, I mean, if they could honestly, you start 8-0-1, if you could play slightly above, 550 hockey the rest of the year, you're pretty much already locked to make the playoffs. I mean, and we've seen it, Marcus. As crazy as it seems, it's Halloween today. Thanksgiving's 3 weeks away, and we've seen it that there's that threshold that and there is stats to back it up. Pretty much what it seems, the top 8 teams that are in the playoffs come Thanksgiving, and the likelihood of you making the playoffs at that point is skyrockets to a pretty high percentage. So I think if the Canadians could play like this, they could treat us to a decent little season. But yeah, relax, folks. For the record, Shea Weber is a very good hockey player, but the Canadians had a better record through 9 games last year at PK Subban. So
and it's 9 games. Let's slow our roll. I'm sure he's already been awarded the Norris Trophy by certain members of the media. But you know what? Now I'm going to ask you. Let's go to the flip side of that coin. Another team we talked about a lot, the Nashville Predators. They are 2-5-1 to start the season. They have the second fewest points in the NHL. Is this a trick or is this a treat? I mean, it's not a treat because we'd like to see them in the playoffs, but is this what we're going to see from them the rest of the season?
Yeah, they're going to be treating us to some more bad hockey. Are they tricking us? I think it's still early in the season. I do think they're tricking us right now. I think this team has way too much talent on paper to not turn this around. So I think that the start of the season is a bit tricky. But Marcus, we talked about Pecorine in the past. I mean, he has had some good starts, but he was miserable against your Sharks. Is that a real issue that they might have to address down the line? It's something that's going to have to be considered. I still think this team, though, is a very, very good team in this league. I think they're too deep. Talk about PK Subban. Guys like Fisher or Forsberg we love up front there. I mean, Roman Josi and Subban on the back end is arguably the top pairing in the NHL. Struggled so far. Their possession numbers haven't been great either. They just seem to be a little handicapped right now. A little bit of a hangover to an extent from last year. But I think they're tricking us. I think you got to have faith. And 9 games, if this was 20, 25 games and it was there in the same position, okay, then maybe I'd be concerned. It's still only 9 games. There's still plenty of time to turn things around. The Penguins didn't get off to a very good start last year. Remember, folks, they were not very good until, frankly, around Thanksgiving is when they sort of carried it. And then once they brought in, they were stagnant even through December. Once they brought in Mike Sullivan, things changed. I don't think that's going to be the case with Laviolette. He's too good of a coach to get fired, nothing like that. But I think the goaltending is something concern, Marcus. I think this is a team that, as much as we like them, I still, down the stretch, they need to add some scoring depth, I think. I think their top-end skill is there, kind of bottoms off with some not necessarily bad NHL players, but realistically, I mean, what are you looking to get from Mike Ribeiro at this point of his career? A Colin Wilson, who's a nice player, but I think another scoring winger there down the stretch was something they'll be doing. But I think they're tricking us right now, and I think they'll come around to where they need to be.
I wrote about this briefly. I did a story on the Sharks starting their season against 7 of 10 playoff teams, which was the 3rd most in the NHL, in the Western Conference. The most in the NHL, tied for the most. Nashville started 8 of 10 against playoff teams. All of their first 8 games are against playoff teams. I think that's as big a reason why as they're struggling. They made a big change, and they're going against teams that were very good a season ago, and I think that's hurt them so far to start the season. I think you look at their schedule coming up, their next 3 games, Avalanche, Coyotes, Hurricanes, and then the Senators after that. They then play the Blues and Ducks, but then it's Maple Leafs, Senators, and then they get the Jets in there too before Thanksgiving. So the schedule will ease up a little bit here. Just from watching them against San Jose on Saturday, I think definitely saw the effects of a bit of a long road trip to start the season. Anytime you have to go Anaheim, LA, San Jose, that's very hard. I think, Subban is still finding his way there. I think I talked to him actually at the Sharks Predators morning skate, and he said it's tough playing in the Western Conference. It's a grind. The teams are, the consensus around the league, he said, is that the teams are bigger and stronger. But he's liked the adjustment so far. He's liked playing in Nashville. I mean, I don't expect him to say anything else. But I think, you watch him, and this is just purely from an eye test perspective, in 1 game against San Jose, but it still looks like he's finding his way. He wasn't super aggressive jumping up into the play. Maybe that's a Laviolette thing. He got more aggressive as the game went on, actually, and the Nashville was trailing, and he was jumping up more. But, it felt like, and this is completely anecdotally, it felt like Josi was more involved in the play than he was offensively. And, they're not – Josi and Subban aren't playing together right now. It's Subban and Ekholm, and then Ellis and Josi.
Surprisingly.
Subban is also not on their top power play unit. They've had a very hot power play to start the season, but it's not totally crazy because they have Roman Yossi, but it's still a little nuts. I think, but they're a team that's finding their way, and I think they're going to. I mean, they're 2-5-1 right now. If they beat Colorado, Arizona, and the Hurricanes in their next 3 games, they're 5-5-1. They're right back. They're right back in it, and I think they're capable of doing that. I saw some things from that. It's just a team that's struggling, and every team does struggle. I think, like you said, Laviolette's too good of a coach. They're too good of a team for this to continue. I think they're going to figure their way out. They might not be as high a seed as we predicted, but this to me feels like a team that maybe will sneak into the playoffs and will be playing their best hockey down the stretch and could catch a team off guard in the postseason.
Yeah, for sure. I think the best is yet to come for Nashville, and it has been early, and there's some adjustments to be there. They're going to add a piece for sure, and they'll be okay. So I think general consensus on Nashville is they're tricking us right now. They won't be treating us to this bad of hockey down the stretch. Moving on, Marcus. All right, I got another one for you here. As we're going through it, I'm bring it back to the East Coast for you here, and a team that made one of the biggest trades in the offseason. Another team that's close to my area, in my neck of the woods. They're actually the closest NHL team to me, if you're being technical about it. The New Jersey Devils, Marcus. I think we expected them to improve, especially offensively, with the addition of Taylor Hall. But listen, 4-2-2. It's not necessarily the best in the world, but they're getting points here, Marcus. They're in a playoff spot, technically speaking, right now, which is pretty much irrelevant 9 games into the season. But what do you think of the Devils? To me, they're playing a little bit above their pay grade, if you ask me. But you know what? You got a guy like Taylor Hall. They seem to be rolling through, and of course, Corey Schneider back there. Are the Devils have a chance to stay in this mix for a while? Are they tricking or treating us?
I think this is a trick. I think their start to the season is a trick so far. I think the biggest thing that they have going for them, like Montreal does, is that their save percentage is very good. You mentioned it about Carey Price. Corey Schneider's in that category where you don't need to be a very good possession team, but they're in the bottom third of the league in terms of puck possession, as opposed to Montreal, who's in the top third. Taylor Hall has been great for them to start the season, which has been really awesome to see. He's been a huge addition for them, but I just think ultimately this is a team that's a little too thin on the back end, and their division is surprisingly pretty loaded with another team we're going to talk about that started off very hot to start the season. I think this is a trick. I think they're getting some good puck luck right now. I believe let me check their PDO, which, for the listeners that don't know, PDO adds save percentage and shooting percentage, and it's a good approximation for who's getting luck. If your number's above 1,000, you're pretty lucky. Their PDO hasn't actually been too amazing, unless I can't read very well. No, they're 8th in the league in PDO. They have the second highest save percentage second highest save percentage in the league. And their shooting percentage is actually pretty low, so they might actually be underperforming in that sense, but they just don't have the puck enough, I think, for them to be a true threat. And I think they've had a bit of a soft schedule to start the year.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. But, if there's one thing I could say positive about the Devils, and Devils insider Kevin Stanley told us this the other day, is I don't know what Edmonton does to evaluate players, because Taylor Hall, he said, has been the best player on the ice for the most part for both teams in every single game he's played on. So.
Yeah, I talked to him about this too. I watched the one of the games Hall scored the winner. It was the overtime winner where he made a defensive play in his own end, carried the puck down the rink, ran a give and go, and scored. And I'm like, was there seriously ever a concern about this guy's defensive ability? And Kevin told me the same thing. He's like, he's been so solid in his own end. I think Hall's a player, and Kevin and I talked about this a little bit. Hall's a player where his reputation has, I think, diminished our perception of it, players' perception of him.
No, I don't get it.
And I don't get where this reputation came from, And I watched Subban last night or the other night too, and I think there's something to be said about reputation being inaccurate about him too. He made a lot of solid defensive plays in his own end, traditionally solid defensive plays, breaking up odd man rushes, that kind of thing. but and then a player like Taylor Hall, I've watched him a little bit this season. I don't understand how that guy could have been, how there could have been defensive concerns about him. I think it's just a product of where he played. Edmonton was so bad, and they're off to a hot start. We'll talk about it a little later, but I think if he's there, they're probably starting just as well, and maybe it looks a little more sustainable with him there. He's been great for the Devils. I think the reputation on him has been completely unfair, and I think it's really good to see him doing so well. And a big market, it's the New York market, and he seems to be really enjoying the adjustment, even though Edmonton started off really strong. And he actually, he was asked about that, and he admitted, of course it's hard to see them do so well because I knew we were on the precipice of a breakthrough. It might not get them into the postseason this year, but I think they're a team next year where I look at them and say, okay, if they take that next step with their development, maybe add a couple more pieces, they're a team that can make the playoffs. But right now, I say this performance is a trick so far. Although Taylor Hall has been a treat for sure.
Frankly, he's always has been a treat here, Marcus, hasn't he?
So now the flip side of that coin, we did the two teams that made a big trade. The other two teams that made a big trade on the same day, we're going to do. Edmonton has been one of the hottest teams in the league to start the season. Connell, is this a trick or is it a treat?
I mean, I'll say we told you Taylor Hall has been a treat. I mean, Connor McDavid's the treat that we'll keep on giving for the next 2 decades here in the NHL. I still think this is a trick. I don't trust Edmonton ever. I won't until they can prove me otherwise. So I will doubt them forever until they pretty much, get to the playoffs again and actually start putting together a competent team. I mean, can McDavid just single-handedly, could McDavid put up 120 points and somehow get this team into the playoffs? Yes. Their roster, just plain and simple, isn't good enough. It's not deep enough at forward. Their blue line is not good enough. I mean, they're just not good enough. Plain and simple. This is a trick. They're hot so far. They're in a new arena. They got a couple new players. I think that's, fine and whatnot. I don't see them treating us to any playoff hockey, though, this year, Marcus. I think they're still a ways away. And when they might have gotten Adam Larson, who's a good top 4 NHL defenseman. When you trade away a player like Taylor Hall, it just doesn't make sense that they're in the right direction. We love McDavid. I'm actually seeing the Oilers on Thursday against the Rangers. I'll be at the game, so I'm excited to go see McDavid. First time I'll ever get to see him live. I just don't see how they're – and Marcus, maybe can you bring up their stats for me, how they've been so far this season as far as PDO and Corsi and all that stuff? I mean, I know Talbot's played well.
They've been solid. They're in the top half in the league, which is bodes well for their playoff chances. But again, they're a team that they've benefited from really, really good goaltending. And you saw Cam Talbot in New York. We saw how he played last year in his first year at Edmonton. And this is not meant as any offense to Cam Talbot, but I do not see them maintaining the 3rd best save percentage in the league over the course of the season. In terms of just total PDO, they're 3rd in the league. They have the 6th highest shooting percentage. When you have McDavid, that helps. But I think even he has probably benefited from a little puck luck to start the season. I also think this is a trick. Unlike Montreal, I think this is a trick because they've been a punchline, and this is part of me probably clinging to my, my quote unquote hockey analytics and wanting to see, teams that are darlings of the mainstream media that don't run their team well, not get rewarded for it. I don't see it so far. They've had 2, and yes, they've beaten both the playoff teams they've played, but they played 2 playoff teams from a year ago. Any team in this league on a given night is capable of beating a team that played in the playoffs. And I haven't checked the I can pull these up, as I buy some time here to pull them up. I haven't actually checked their possession stats from when they played St. Louis and when they played Washington. I know that they beat the Capitals 4-1, but I just call me a hater, call me whatever. I legitimately don't see it with them. I think they've benefited from a soft schedule to start the year. They played Calgary twice already. I think they played Winnipeg twice. It's a team that has benefited from who they're playing. They're going to go through the gauntlet of the Pacific Division. I think coming up pretty soon, they're probably going to play the California teams. And they're going to play some teams that are very good puck possession teams. And, Todd McClellan's a good puck possession coach. He's had them improved. And I think Edmonton is improving, but I think Connor McDavid's great. He'll probably win the MVP, but I don't think he alone is enough to carry a team to the postseason, certainly to carry them anywhere far. And like I said, I still think they're worse than they were last year. I think.
Yeah, so do I.
I don't think Lucic is going to help them that much. I think their blue line's better. Chris Russell's had a good start to the season, and some people are already saying, "Oh, well, look at their record, and even though he's Corsi, it's like he's not a great defenseman, and it's ultimately going to catch up to them playing guys above their weight and above their pay grade. I think it's going to catch up to Edmonton. I'm forever going to be skeptical about them until I see them make the postseason. I think it's fair to reserve that judgment on them because they, quite simply have not been very good and haven't managed that talent well. And until they show me otherwise, even though they're playing well through, again, it's 9 games, 2 of their first 10 are against playoff teams. The funniest thing was their play-by-play broadcaster tweeted something about, the game they won against St. Louis, that's not a game I could see them winning at any point over the last 6 years, even though they beat St. Louis the last time they played them in April. Literally the last time they played them in April, the Oilers beat St. Louis. I think, like some of the other guys we're talking about, they're at Montreal and Shea Weber, it's a product of the narrative. Everybody wants Edmonton, these writers want, not that necessarily these writers on a whole scale, but the narrative is Edmonton made a big trade. They traded their skill away, and now they have Connor McDavid, and now they're ready to take that next step. But I don't think it, the narrative, I don't buy the narrative with them, but I don't think I ever will until they make the postseason.
Yep, I agree with you 1,000% on the same page there. Edmonton just doesn't have it to me. And like you said, it's just done anything to prove me to believe that. So they will continue to trick you and going to trick me into believing that, Marcus. That's for sure. That's something that I can say very proudly and strongly there. A team that's another been a surprise here, Marcus. I'm going to ask you here on your third one here. It's been surprising, and we wonder. And I think the biggest surprising thing is this is a team that absolutely relies on goals, needs to score goals, and they are near the bottom. They might be last. They are tied for second to last in goals for this season. The Dallas Stars with 18 in 6th place right now. They're right there with Nashville, and they haven't been good so far. 3-4-1 to start the season for 7 points. A team that was all about goals last year, and we predicted to be there again. Obviously their goaltending is an issue, but they've only allowed 26 goals, which hasn't been technically, hasn't been brutal compared to some other teams in this league, Marcus. But the biggest problem, their offense is dried up. Are they tricking us here? Are they going to get it together? Are they treating us into what would be a very disappointing season in Dallas?
I think this is a treat. I think this is maybe a little more than I expected. But they lost Alex Goligoski. They lost Jason Demers. They replaced him with Dan Hamhuis and a collection of young players. It's still early, and you maybe wonder why I'm saying this is a treat where Nashville isn't. Again, I think it's the goaltending. I think, even though Pekka Rinne's been bad, I think Nashville has more flexibility to get a goalie and improve their team in that sense than Dallas does. And, we said it in our Central Division preview. This team is going to be undone by its goaltending. They haven't been a good puck possession team to start the season. I think that will improve, like I think it will for Nashville. But I just as I don't trust Edmonton to improve, I don't trust Dallas's goaltending to improve. Now, if they get Jarl Halak, I think that's a possibility. So, we'll see what happens. But I think this is what we're going to, see from Dallas. I think this is a team that's going to struggle to they won't struggle to make the postseason, but they're going to struggle. And I think they're going to have, unless they get another defenseman or they get a good goaltender and, the goals, if they dry up and if they have a cold year, which is possible, we've seen people regress and, they might regress back the next year, but, they're a team that they have no margin for error in terms of puck luck.
That's the problem. Is a team.
They have absolutely no margin for error, and there's a lot of error right now. And I think ultimately this is, maybe a little worse than I expected, but I don't think this is a trick by any means. I think
the problem with Dallas, and you're seeing it here, they are either, I mean, it's an extremely high ceiling for them, but it is a very, very low floor for them as well. And if they can't score, if Sagan and Ben can't be the Sagan and Ben of last year and in the past, they could be in deep, deep trouble. They have not been the electric team offensively. They have been, although I was looking at a stat. I was judging the most exciting players for generating scoring chances. I mean, they had 7 of the top 14 players there, so they can get it going. They score some goals, but they're going to have to be a team that's going to be scoring 4 or 5 goals a game. And right now, that's been dry. Their goaltending's not good. Will they ever fix it? Frankly, if they don't, they're not going anywhere. I still think they'll make the playoffs, but I'm with you. I think they could treat us for some disappointment here. And I'm a huge Dallas fan. I like what they do.
We love Dallas. We love Dallas. But they love the high-end talent. But
need a defenseman, need a goalie. Otherwise, it could be a long season in the Big D down there, Marcus.
Yeah, and finally, our last team, we're gonna examine whether or not they're tricking or treating us. We had to do it with one of our teams. The Sharks aren't as surprising as your New York Rangers, Connell, who sit at 6-3. Is this a trick, or are we being treated to a potentially very good New York Rangers team this season?
Well, I don't know if I'll ever trust the Rangers. So as far as I'm concerned, they're always trying to trick me. They're always trying to let me down. Realistically, trying to be unbiased, I think they're treating us from the standpoint is they're finally, if you're a Ranger fan like myself, it's finally good to be optimistic that the management has finally put together some pieces here that you got to be excited about. I mean, their forward group, they're basically running four scoring lines. Michael Grabner had a hat trick last night. For the most part, he's been playing on the 4th line this season. Now, because of Kreider being injured, he was moved up to the 3rd line. But he had a hat trick last night. And he's a guy who, for the most part of the season, is going to be playing on your 4th line. Listen, Kevin Hayes is who got more flack than he deserved last year. Has been playing great. Kreider's been unbelievable. VC's been a nice it was a surprise. I think he'll settle down a little bit. His shooting percentage right now is 31.6%. So I don't think
that's not going to maintain. I don't
think that's very sustainable. Buchnevich has been good. Kreider, before he got hurt, he's coming back tomorrow night. And frankly, the goaltending it's been okay. Lundqvist has like a 900 save percentage already through in like 7 starts. They're scoring. They're leading the league in scoring goals. Frankly, I think I'm hesitant to say it, but I do think they're going to treat us a little bit more than we expected. I still think if they don't get a top 4 defenseman to add to that group, they're not going to be anything over the top. But I said it before this broadcast. I think similar to the Penguins last year, they don't need to go out and get a Kevin Shattenkirk right now. They just need a good another puck moving defenseman to come in there. And frankly, I as much as I don't like AV playing Girardi and Holden the way he has, it's pretty much been playing McDonough 25-plus minutes, and then everybody else has been playing like 17, 18 minutes. They kind of just distribute that. If that's the case, you know who your best blue liner is. I think they could treat us into something special. It's still a team that needs another defenseman, but now they have the forward depth where you could be like, listen, you could probably give up a guy. I think a guy like Oscar Lindbergh could be the guy on the odd man out. He's still young enough, and he's on a good contract. There's a good chance they lose him in the expansion draft anyway. They might try to move him, package him together with maybe a draft pick or 2 and improve it. It's been a treat to watch. They've honestly played one bad game, and they won it because Lundqvist played his best game against the Coyotes that day. I think there's a lot of room for optimism. So it's a hesitant, as a Ranger fan who's always been disappointed, it seems. It's a hesitant treat so far, mostly because it's refreshing to see what a fast and basically anybody on the ice can score. I mean, they have Brandon Peary, who's playing 4th line minutes, who's one of my favorites. I've been asking for 2 years basically. But he's a guy who's for the most part playing 4th line minutes, but he's playing on your top power play. I mean, that's something that teams that run a system like this can do pretty sustainable. So I think hesitantly they are treating us so far. I still think there's room to improve, but you got to be pleased if you're a Ranger fan.
Yeah, their save percentage surprisingly hasn't been very good. I think they're
hasn't
they've been
really
the bottom half of the league. They're not too low. I'm going to say they're a treat as well. I think, in score adjusted Corsi, they sit 10th, but in score adjusted Fenwick, they sit 6th. And if you're a top 10 team, you have Lundqvist that's without a great defense. We saw it last year with Pittsburgh, and I think, kind of lost in the discussion about how fast they were, which is so true. They really had a lot of good, solid forwards up front that could chip in offensively that were on cheap contracts that they built around Sidney Crosby. And, outside of Chris Letang, their defense really wasn't much to write home about. It was just very versatile. They had a lot of guys that could play, depending on the opponent, they could mix and match who was playing with who and what lineups were what lineups were going in there. Mike Sullivan had a great quote about that this past week, how he's, they on every, without Letang especially, they're kind of mixing and matching and seeing who matches up well against who. And I think that's benefited them. And I agree with you. I still think the Rangers need another defenseman. I'm not sure who that target would be.
I don't know who it's going to be either. I don't really know.
I don't know if they need to get Jacob Trouba. I don't know if they need to get Kevin Shattenkirk. I'm sure they'd love to. But, I think this is a team that, I think they're going to be a solid playoff team. And if they can get that other defenseman and they, get some scoring and Lundqvist is as good as he's always been, I think that's a team that absolutely is a contender in the Eastern Conference if those things go right.
Right, exactly.
I was still a little hesitant to say that otherwise, but I think this is a very pleasant surprise for Ranger fans and for you, I'm sure, because I think you were more optimistic. I was a little lower on the Rangers than I've been in the past, but I think their forward depth, at least so far, has really helped them, and has really made the difference, especially with that blue line so badly. But you see that blue line is kind of a poor man's Pittsburgh. They've got McDonough as their Letang, so to speak, and I think McDonough does things a little differently than Letang, but he's a guy that you can absolutely ride if needed. And then the rest of the 5 guys around him just kind of, it depends on any given night who's going to be relied upon to play against certain types of players. So I think they've been a treat so far to start the season, and I think they ultimately will be. And, once Henrik Lundqvist gets going, like we've seen him get going after slow starts to a season, look out, because this is a team that, if this level of play maintains and then Lundqvist improves, that has the makings of a very good team.
Like referring to what I said about Montreal, if the Rangers could stick around that top 10 mark and then Lundqvist gets to his usual .920 save percentage, I don't care who's on the blue line, that's lethal because you're going to have a goalie who's going to be able to steal you games and you're still going to have the puck that much, which means, last year he saw the most shots of his career and that was a big issue and he just pretty much wore down. If you can prevent that, it goes a long way, especially for a guy who's a little bit older. And then you got to, hey, listen, Antti Raanta, nearly had a shutout last night. He's a good backup. I'm a big fan of his. Is it sustainable? We'll see. So I think right now they're treating us. I think I'm hesitant to say they're going to treat us for the rest of the season. And
they do have the second highest shooting percentage in the league, and that you might expect that to come down a little bit.
Yeah,
but you still like their. I love their forward group. I think it's as deep as any in the league potentially. It's just the question is, can that defense hold up? And so far they have, and I think especially if they had another piece, they could. Like you said before the show, if they had Keith Yandel, he'd probably have 60 points this season.
If they had Keith Yandel, forget it. He's ridiculous. What could have been.
Now we shift gears a little bit from, or do we have one more team?
No, I asked you 3. You asked me 3, right?
Right. We did all 6 of our tricks or treats before the kids go trick-or-treating tonight. Now we're going to kind of end the show on a bit of a fun note. We're going to ask about the scariest, spookiest players in the league, but not from the ways you might think. So the first way we'll talk about it is from a skill perspective, who's the scariest player to play against? And then I think the better question, for fear they might do something stupid.
Who's the guys who always come to mind?
Who's the scariest person in the league? Connell, I'll start with you. From a skill perspective, who's the scariest player in the league?
Being in the Eastern Conference and in the same division with Pittsburgh and Washington over these years, the last 10 years, Sidney Crosby and Ovechkin have seemingly always haunted my dreams. It's always fun to see guys from the West Coast, guys, coming over. Joe Thornton comes to mind, or Erik Karlsson and now PK Subban in the West over there. And there's always been guys like that. But for me, the guy who haunts my dreams more than anybody when he has the puck, I am always scared is Ovechkin. And it's probably because of all the playoff series, and it's probably because I'm a Ranger fan. You could say Crosby too, and I'd believe you. But for me, when Ovechkin's coming up the ice with speed, he's so big. He is so intimidating. He's mean. He's talented. He knows he's better than you, and he's going to embarrass you while he does it. I have never in my life when I see a player with the puck, do I get more nervous than when Alex Ovechkin. Crosby is from a different standpoint because he's a little bit more tricky, if you will, because he's more all of a sudden out of nowhere. Ovechkin, you know it's coming, and it's like you still can't stop it, which is almost even scarier. I'd rather Crosby just come around, from a horror movie standpoint, Crosby is the guy who hides around the corner and just all of a sudden, boom, knocks you with the axe, and you're dead immediately. Ovechkin just sees you, screams, go after yourself, and then just charges at you, and there's nothing you can do. Like it's just he's Leatherface with the chainsaw.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
He comes right at you with the chainsaw. Crosby's more of like Michael Myers, like kind of lurks and just gets you, But for me, it's Ovechkin. Just always has just I've never in my life have seen anything like it. He scares the hell out of me always.
I'm gonna go with a similar type of player. This player is on the blue line though, and he fortunately for me plays for the San Jose Sharks. But you mentioned skill, you mentioned speed, and you mentioned size. Brent Burns, I think, has got to be one of the scariest players in the league to play against. I mean, first of all, if he has the puck at the point, you don't want to get in the way of his shot because it's probably going to hurt, whether it's a clapper or his. He likes that snapshot. He likes to take a quick, hard snapshot from the point that doesn't look fun to get in the way of. He's 6'5", 230, and he skates like he's 5'6", 180 pounds. I mean, his edge control is unbelievable. He's so good, with the puck, skating backwards. And as a player who tried to play defense in my heyday, I can attest to how hard that is to do what he does. And plus, too, like he just looks the most like a horror villain of any player in the league, other than maybe Joe Thornton. He looks nasty. He's got that huge beard. He's tatted up. He's intimidating, and I think he's a player that I would not want to go up against, especially if I was a forward, because you're gonna have to defend him, but he's also gonna defend you. He can lay the body. He can give a pretty vicious body check. It's an unprecedented, I think, unparalleled match of size, skill, and speed in the league, and I don't think it's necessarily talked about enough. It was nice to see him, take that next step and get recognized and get nominated for the Norris Trophy. And he's a guy who's another reason he's one of the scariest players in the league. His contract is up after next year. I believe he'll be 31 next offseason still, but it is also scary to imagine how many dollars are going to go into his bank account after this season. So I gotta go with Brent Burns from that perspective.
Yeah, it makes sense, and he's definitely got the physical attributes, as we said, to look like a horror movie villain. If he came at you, with a machete, you'd be running the other way for sure.
Oh man, yeah. I don't know what his weapon of choice would be. I think though we do have the makings of a good horror film here if we cast him as the villain.
Yeah, he would like. I feel like machete for close range, and then he'd shoot you with like a crossbow from like.
Yes. Oh yeah, no, definitely a crossbow.
Just
definitely
like a crossbow. Just right in the middle of the forehead,
yeah.
like
and something like absurd enough where you're like, yeah, I could see him doing. I mean, this is a guy who RV trip and he trained over the off season by biking alongside of it and doing workouts in a Walmart parking lot while his family slept in the RV. He's a weird guy. He's very good, very weird, but in a good way for sure.
Yeah, exactly. We'll shift gears there. I'll go right back at you here, Marcus. A fear from a different standpoint, because there's like 2 or 3 guys who throughout the career I've always thought of. A fear that they might do something just stupid. Like, they have no other purpose on the ice other than to do something stupid. You're scared they're going to hurt somebody, whether it's a flying elbow, a slew foot, a check in the back into the boards. For me, I can think of a few. What about you? Maybe someone in the West Coast who I'm not thinking of, or I don't know, but anybody whether they were on the Sharks and you couldn't stand them, or just playing against you, like, oh god, this guy's gonna go after Pavelski tonight or something like that.
Oh man, it's tough. I think there's a lot of players in the league that like to take will do something stupid. I'm gonna go with a little different one. I'm also gonna go with another player on the Sharks, and I think this was the bane of his career, and I think probably, other than the injuries, which certainly derailed his career, probably cost him a spot in the league long term. But Rafi Torres.
He is an idiot. That guy's an idiot.
So he comes to San Jose and he's acquired. And at the time of the deal, I was skeptical because he's a guy who had a deserved reputation, did a lot of stupid things on the ice. But I think unlike the guys, maybe the Sestitos or other guys that do something stupid, Rafi Torres was a good hockey player. He was a good when he found the right balance with his, his edge, so to speak. He was a good hockey player. He had good skill. He was a good third liner. He could chip in offensively. And, his first postseason in Teal probably got a reputation suspension. It was completely, in my opinion, an unintentional hit and wasn't very dirty. And then he had a pretty significant knee injury. Then he came back, and that preseason got that half-season suspension or whatever because he headshotted a guy. There was always a fear with him that he'd do something stupid. And I think unlike most players who have done stupid things, potentially in the past, the fear with Torres is greater is because he's actually a good hockey player. You don't want to lose a player like that from your lineup. And I think the sword cut two ways in that sense. Not on the Sharks. I mentioned them, but I think the Sestito brothers were created in a lab and designed to do one thing, and that's to be, knuckle draggers on the ice, so to speak.
The greatest. I forget who said it. It was a tweet or somebody said it. The Sestito brothers have never played a single game of hockey in their entire career. Which is like the greatest thing ever because it's so true. I mean, they're just clowns. From me though, the one that stands out more than any. I mean, there's been some bad players throughout the years. I mean, Rafael Gudas is getting on that list for me because he seemingly just doesn't get. Yeah. He's an idiot, that guy. The one though is for me is Patrick Coletta. At any time he got suspended for headbutting Jacob Voracek. He literally took his helmet and went boom to his face. Like, this guy is a guy who clearly doesn't get it consistently. And then I remember the game he did it against Brad Richards, who I actually thought Brad Richards might have broke his neck. He hit him so hard into the boards. This guy just never ever got it. I'm glad he's currently not in the league. He had an ACL injury. He's really never come back from it. Had some tryout offers here and there. But a guy who anytime someone had their back turned to the boards, I really looked to see if he was usually worth 36. I looked to see if 36 was on the ice because I was like, oh my, he just didn't get it. Coletta, he's just frustrating to think about because he was one of those guys who you're like, yeah, I suspended you. And he's in an interview and he's like, yeah, I mean, I didn't think it was that bad. I'm like, he just doesn't get it. He just really – he was just an idiot. Always scared me because I just thought he was going to do something dumb. Maybe scared from doing something dumb too. I thought he was more of a fighter. But Donald Brashear was another idiot I couldn't stand. I watched him basically end Blair Betts' career as a Ranger. Just threw an elbow in a playoff game and knocked out Blair Betts on the ice. I was right there. But Coletta's the one for me, just – An idiot.
I think another one on the Rafi Torres note, and we love it as well because of the excellent Ask Neil hashtag. But James Neal is another guy.
I actually quoted a tweet today because I was like, never forget. James Neal, yeah. You
worry when he's on the ice that his you worry his elbow is like a heat-seeking missile and it's gonna find somebody. One of the greatest, one of the greatest Twitter, and Kyle quote tweeted it today. I mean, one of the greatest Twitter hashtags that just went horribly wrong.
Yeah, if you ever want to look up top 10 worst PR moves by professional sports teams, that has to be it. If you don't know what we're talking about, this was what 3 seasons ago.
2013-14.
Yeah, and the Penguins had the hashtag Ask Neil as he took over the Twitter page. For example. it wasn't even trending in Pittsburgh. It was the number one trending thing for like 3 hours in Philadelphia and Boston. Like every other fan base came in and just trolled Neil for, all his knees and elbows and cross checks. And he's always had a bit of a dirty player rep thing there. If you ever have time and just want to spend 45 minutes, wasting your day, go through all those tweets because it's
guffawing. You will laugh harder than you've ever laughed in your life.
Personally, yeah.
I think he's dialed it back though. I think since he got
he definitely is. He's not what he was. I agree. He's definitely settled down.
I think he's found that right balance. There was a stretch, man, when he was on the Penguins where it was just as likely that he could, score 3 goals or get a 15-minute, misconduct and have to get kicked out of the game. And maybe in the same game.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't surprise me. He's another cloud. Yeah, but Kaleta for me is always number one. And then with the puck on his stick, keep Ovechkin away from me. I never want to see it.
I can't blame you for that. And, I hope you enjoy your Halloween tonight. I hope it's not as scary as seeing Alex Ovechkin come down his off wing.
Hard to beat
that. Before we wrap up, though, anything you're looking for from this week? Anything you're excited to see in the league? Any potential games? Any potential trends you've got your eye on?
I've always considered, Marcus, the 9-game mark here is this is the limit for the junior players. Whether or not teams are going to hold on to guys like Matt Tkachuk, Pavel Zacha. Although I think Zacha will stay just because the Devils don't really have the depth otherwise. Does Toronto surprise us and send down Austin Matthews? Really trick us? Who knows?
I don't think he's junior eligible though. He played in Switzerland last year.
That'd be so. Yeah, exactly. They can't even do it. But
still try. That'd be so funny.
Yeah, we imagine that like that. But no, seriously, that's always an interesting thing to see. The teams. What's better for a guy's development? Is it to maybe struggle his first year in the NHL but learn how to play at the NHL level, or do you want to build his confidence up and let him go put another 90 points up in the OHL or something like that? So always something to keep an eye on. I'm excited to see McDavid on Thursday. I'm going to the game, so that'll be a lot of fun. And I think November is it's one of my favorite months now. I mean, especially with now you're starting to get comfortable. Now you're really kind of getting to hockey season. You're 10 to 15 games into the season. And, that Thanksgiving mark, I always look at it to see who's in the playoffs at that point because over the long haul throughout the start of the, since the NHL has really expanded to especially the 82-game schedule, that Thanksgiving threshold seems to hold up. So we'll see what it's like in a couple of weeks. I'm curious to see, will Trouba sign? He's got a month. He's got a month tomorrow to sign, or he cannot play this season, Marcus. He's got till December 1st. That is the RFA deadline. We look for him, and then I guess Jarl Halak. We'll see if he gets wound up getting moved. But it's going to be fun. I said November is one of my favorite months for hockey because that's when you're like, all right, now October you're feeling things out. You're like, all right, now here's my team. Like, they've made their waiver moves. They tried a couple guys out. Now you're kind of like, here's my team. Let's lock in. Let's go.
I've got 2 games I think on this week that I think are going to be must watches. One, obviously Saturday, second rematch, Pittsburgh Penguins, San Jose Sharks. Sidney Crosby will be back for that one, barring any injury. I'm not sure when Letang's supposed to come back, but I can actually I'll fact check myself right now and look up how long he's injured for. But if he comes back, neither of those guys were in the lineup the last time the Sharks played the Penguins. The last time the Sharks played the Penguins, they blew a 2-goal lead at the third period, which was certainly not fun for them. But the other game, the Team North America reunion. McDavid Matthews at the Air Canada Center tomorrow night. 2 of the leaders in points in the league. 4 of his points came from one game, but Austin Matthews has 10 points on his very young NHL career. I'm really excited to watch that game. I think that's going to be very, very fun to watch. I think it's going to be a nice little Team North America reunion, a team that we loved so dearly. Actually, Letang's going to meet the team in Philadelphia, or was going to meet the team in Philadelphia on their road trip. Could be back in the lineup on their road trip, according to Dave Molinari of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Would be great to see him back in a Stanley Cup final rematch. But I'm very excited tomorrow, just as you are, to see McDavid in person. I'm excited to see him play against the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think that's got the potential, seeing how much Edmonton scored and even how much Toronto scored in spite of their goalie. That has a potential, for a 4-3 to a 7-6 kind of a game.
I got it 8-7. Overtime winner for McDavid. McDavid's going to have 7 points, and Matthews will have 5 points. It'll be a good one.
Just like our preseason predictions that, aren't looking great right now, this is a lock. This is absolutely something you can bank on. I would go to your nearest bookie and tell him I'm betting on Connor McDavid to have 7 points in an 8-7 win over the Toronto Maple Leafs tomorrow. Because if you don't, you'll probably end up regretting it from our expert gambling advice.
Absolutely. It's the way to go. Marcus, do the Cubs come back and win, or do the Indians take it home here?
That's the real question. I haven't watched as much of the World Series as I would have liked. There's just been, some conflicts here and there. I haven't been able to watch it. Excuse me. I think they get another win, but I think they're going to lose in heartbreaking.
Oh, but losing 7 games. I mean, talk about just a dagger to the heart of Chicago to have them be down 3-1, force a game 7, and then lose.
I think it'd be pretty funny, but if Cleveland, if losing makes them change their logo, then go Cubs, because that I don't get it. I just don't get how that logo exists in the world today.
Fun fact of the day, sticking with baseball, I was reading this the original field that the Cubs played at before Wrigley. There was a mental hospital out in left field, and that is where the term "out of left field" came from.
No way.
Straight up. Apparently that's true. So I learned that today. You learn something new every day. That's why you keep reading.
That is amazing. I hope that's true.
Yeah, apparently it's true. I saw it tweeted out. I was checking out MLB cathedrals or old ballparks. It's a fun Twitter account I follow. So yeah, apparently out of left field, it's because there's a mental hospital beyond left field, the old Cubs place.
Seems like kind of the worst place to put a baseball stadium, other than like on top of a toxic waste dump or like next to a nuclear power plant.
Great horror movie.
Oh my God!
We call it Out of Left Field. Oh,
Brent Burns.
Starring who?
Brent Burns.
Oh, yeah, there it is. There it is. Starring Brent Burns. Oh my God, it's the way to do it.
That's great.
There it is.
Well, Connell, it was a pleasure talking hockey and baseball and Halloween. A pleasure as always. Let's make the plans right now. When will we be back to do this again?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say another week or two. We'll check in, see what happens with, I'd say probably a week or two into November, then right around Thanksgiving, and then we'll pick it up in December. Hopefully Jacob Trouba is signed by then. You don't want him sitting out the whole season. That could kind of hurt his reputation a little bit. So we'll see what happens.
The third Pucklehead if he's not doing anything.
You know what? That's it. That's a good move. So Jacob, I know you're a big fan. If you're listening, we'll give you a call. And if you're not signed by December 1st, you could be like our intern or something. It's unpaid, but, it's good for the resume, and we'll figure it out from there.
You will not get any kind of course credit at all. Even if you're enrolled in a school, you will not get course credit. We don't have the power to do that, and you will be kicked off the show when we are joined by Christian Bale for our trade deadline.
Of course. So,
we don't want any conflicts of personality there. Well, for Connell, I'm Marcus. Thanks for listening. Have a happy Halloween. Stay safe. I hope you get a lot of candy. Burt Macklin, do you have a sign up for us?
Yeah, just stay safe out there, kids, and just remember, don't go to the Snake Hole Lounge tonight and drink too much snake juice, because that's how Burt Macklin died. Okay. The dead. Anyway, folks, thanks for listening and putting up with us as always. We'll see you in a few weeks. Happy Halloween. Stay safe out there.
Bye, guys.